on this image, you can see on the pillars, there's the universes right there, but some of the pillars don't have universes. So I believe that the 6 universes that were destroyed, those pillars, they represent that. And in terms of how the Omni King is going to destroy the universes, instead of him just destroying the universe altogether, all he probably has to do is destroy that little sphere or that represents the universes, and boom, your universe is gone. So it's almost like he's taking the universes and putting them on top of pillars, and this tournament is likely going to take outside of the 12 universes. I think this tournament is taking place in like either a different dimension or a different type of stage that lives outside of the universes, and that is my prediction. But let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think, and what are your predictions for these Gods of Destruction? What are you hyped about, and who do you think is gonna be the villain for the next arc, if there is a villain? Alright, this could literally just be a tournament. So let us know in the comments below, and thank you guys for joining me yesterday on the live stream, and the people who joined me on Discord. I really appreciate it, and I will definitely be working hard to bring you guys some dope videos this week.
You successfully tempered with the Wii. You successfully tempered with the PS3 and got some legal challenges over there?
Some unfounded legal challenges, yes.
And then you fucked, and excuse my French over here, by the way, that is number 8021 to get the translation on your DCT phone. So you fucked with the Wii U as well. And, well, console hacking 2016.
Yes.
Here we go.
So I'm a lazy guy, so I haven't turned on my computer yet for the slides, so let me do that. Hopefully this will work. So my computer is a little bit special. It runs a lot of open source software. It runs FreeBSD. It runs, it even has things like OpenSSL in there, and Nginx, and Cairo, I think, and WebKit. It runs a lot of interesting open source software. But we all know that BSD is dying, so we can make it run something a little bit more interesting, and hopefully give a presentation about it. Let's see if this works. It's a good start, black screen, you know. It's, it's syncing to disk and file system shutting down. There we go. And yes, I run Gen 2 Linux. This is the does Wi-Fi work moment. Hopefully. NTP, yeah, no, NTP failed. Well, that's a bit annoying, but it still works. Hello. Yeah, it takes a bit to boot. It doesn't run systemd, you know, so it's sane. It's a tiny bit slower, but it's sane. There we go. This is the does my controller work moment. Bluetooth and the install one. Okay, it does. All right, so let's get started. So this is console hacking 2016 PS4 PC Master Race. I apologize for the horrible Nazi joke in the subtitle, but it's a Reddit thing. So yeah, PC Master Race. Why? Well, PS4. Is it a PC? Is it not a PC? But before we get started, I would like to dedicate this talk to my good friend Ben Bayer, who we all knew was pushing. Unfortunately, he passed away in February of this year, and he was a great hacker. He came to multiple congresses, one of the nicest people I've ever met. I'm sure some of you who have met him would agree with that. And if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here, so thank you. So, the PS4, is it a PC? Is it not a PC? Well, it's a little bit different from previous consoles. It has x86, it's an x86 CPU, it runs FreeBSD, it runs WebKit. It doesn't have a hypervisor, unfortunately. Then again, the PS3 had a hypervisor and it was useless, so there you go. And so this is different from the PS3, but it's not completely different. It does have a security processor that you can just ignore because it doesn't really secure anything. So that's good. All right, so how to own a PS4? Well, you write a WebKit exploit and you write a FreeBSD exploit, duh, right? And everything runs WebKit, and FreeBSD is not exactly the most secure OS in the world, especially not with Sony customizations. So this is, this is completely boring stuff. Like, what's the point of talking about WebKit and FreeBSD exploits? Instead, this talk is going to be about something a little bit different. First of all, after you run an exploit, well, step 3, something, step 4, profit. What is this about? And not only that, though, before you write an exploit, you usually want to have the code you're trying to exploit. And with WebKit and FreeBSD, you kind of do, but not the build they use, and it's customized, and it's annoying to write an exploit if you don't have, access to the binary. So how do you get the binary in the first place? How do you dump the code? That's an interesting step. So let's get started with step 0, black box code extraction the fun way. A long time ago, in a hackerspace far, far away, Failure of all got together after 31c3, and we looked at the PS4 motherboard, and this is what we saw. So there's an Aeolio Southbridge, that's a code name, by the way. Then there's a Liverpool APU, which is the main processor. It's a GPU and a CPU, which is done by AMD. And it has some RAM. And then, the Southbridge, it connects to a bunch of random crap, like the USB ports, a hard disk, which is USB for some inexplicable reason. The internal disk on the PS4 is USB. Like, it's SATA to USB and then to USB on the Southbridge. Even though it has SATA, like, what? The Blu-ray drive is SATA, the Wi-Fi Bluetooth SSDIO, and the Ethernet is GMII. Okay, how do we attack this? Well, GDDR, what just, oh, I have a screensaver apparently. That's great. I thought I killed that. Let me kill all the screensaver real quick. Something had to fail. It always does. I mean, of course, I can SSH into my PS4, right? So there you go. Okay. I could have sworn I fixed that. Anyway, so yeah, which one of these interfaces do you attack? Well, USB SATA is the IO GMII. That's the, the raw Ethernet interface, by the way. All of these are CPU controlled. The CPU issues commands and the devices reply. The devices can't really do anything. So you can't write to memory or anything like that. You can exploit USB if you find a bug in the USB driver, but we're back to the no code issue. So GDDR5, that would be great. We could just write to all memory and basically own the entire thing, but it's a very high-speed bus. It's definitely exploitable. If you're making a secure system, don't assume we can't own GDDR5, because we will, but it's not the path of least resistance, so we're not going to do that. However, there's a thing called PCI Express in the middle there. That's interesting. PCIe is very fun for hacking, even though it might seem intimidating, because it's bus mastering. That means you can DMA to memory. It's complicated, and complicated things are hard to implement properly. It's robust. People think that PCIe is this voodoo high speed. No, it's not. It's high speed, but you don't need matched traces to make it work. It will run over wet string. Like, you can hotwire PCIe with pieces of wire, and it will work. At least at short distances anyway. Believe me, it's not as bad as you think. It's delay tolerant. So you can take your time to reply. And the drivers are full of fail because nobody writes a PCIe driver assuming the device is evil, even though, of course, everybody should, because devices can and will be evil. But nobody does that. So what can we do? Well, we have a PCIe link. Let's cut the lines and plug in the Southbridge to the motherboard, to a PC motherboard that we stick on the side. So now the Southbridge is a PCI card for us. And we connect the APU to an FPGA board, which then can pretend to be a PCIe device. So we can man the middle of this PCIe bus, and it's now ×1 width instead of ×4 because it's easier that way, but it'll negotiate. That's fine. So how do we connect the motherboard and the FPGA? There's, of course, many ways of doing this, but how many of you have done any hardware hacking, even Arduino or anything like that? Raise your hand. I think that's about 1/3 to 1/2 or something like that, at least. And when you hack some hardware, you melt some hardware. After you blink an LED, what is the first interface you use to talk to your hardware? Serial port. So we run PCIe over RS-232 at 115 kilobaud, which makes this PCIe... I said it was delay tolerant. So it makes this PCIe 0.00002x. And eventually, there was a gigabit Ethernet port on the FPGA, so I upgraded to that. But I only got around to doing it in one direction. So now it's PCIe 0.0002 in one direction and 0.4 in the other direction, which has to make this one of the most asymmetric buses in the world. But it works. Like, believe me, this is hilarious. You can run PCIe over serial. Also, we were ASCII encoding, so half the bandwidth. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. So, PCIe 101, it's a reliable packet switch network. It uses a thing called transaction layer packets, which are basically just packets you send. And it can be, memory read, memory write, IO read, IO write, configuration read, configuration write. It can be a message signaled interrupt, which is a way of saying, hey, listen to me, by writing to an address in memory. Because you can write the things, so why not write for interrupts? It has legacy interrupts, which are basically emulating the old set this wire low for interrupt and high for no interrupt thing. You can toggle that over PCIe. And it has completions, which are basically the reply. So if you read a value from memory, the completion is what you get back with the value you tried to read. Okay. So it's PCIe, right? So we can just go wild with DMA. We can just read all memory, dump the kernel. Hey, it's awesome, right? Except there's an IOMMU in the APU. But, of course, the IOMMU will, protect devices. It will only let you access what memory is mapped to your device. So the host has to allow you to read and write the memory. But just because there's an IOMMU doesn't mean that Sony uses it properly. So here's some pseudocode, and it has a buffer on the stack. It says, please read from flash to this buffer with the correct length. Can anyone see the problem with this code? Well, it maps the buffer, and it reads and then unmaps the buffer. But IOMMUs don't just map byte foo to byte bar. They map pages, and pages are 64K on the PS4. So Sony has just mapped 64K of its stack to the device. So we can just DMA straight into the stack, basically the whole stack, and take over. So now we get code execution, FreeBSD kernel dump, and Webkit and iOS libs dump, just from mapping the flash. OK. That's step 0. So we have the code, but this is not, that's not the PS4 that we did this on. It's a, it's a giant mess of wires. Someone here knows about that, flying all over the place. But we're going to make a nice exploit. We've done that because, as I said, WebKit, FreeBSD, whatever. What comes after that? OK. We want to do something. Of course, we want to run Linux, duh. And how do you go from FreeBSD to Linux? It's not a trivial process, but we use something that we call PS4K exec. So how does this work? It's, it's simple, right? You just want to run Linux, just jump to Linux, right? Well, kind of. You need to load Linux into contiguous physical RAM, set up boot parameters, shut down FreeBSD cleanly, halt secondary CPUs, make new page tables, disable blah, 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 blah. A lot of random things. I'm not going to bore you with all this crap because you can read the code, but there's a lot of iteration in getting this to work. Let's assume that you do all this magical cleanup and you get Linux into a nice state and you can, jump Linux. Okay. Now we jump Linux, right? It's cool. Yeah, OK, you can technically jump to Linux, and it will technically run for a little bit. Then it'll stop. And you're not going to get any serial or any video or anything. What's going on here? OK, let's talk about hardware. What is x86? x86 is a mediocre instruction set architecture by Intel. It's OK, I guess. It's not great. It's OK. PS4 is definitely x86. It's x86-64. What is a PC? A PC is a horrible, horrible thing built upon piles and piles of legacy crap dating back to 1981. The PS4 is definitely not a PC. Then again, that's practically Sony-level hardware fail, so it could be, but it's not. OK, so what's going on? Well, a legacy PC basically has an 8259 programmable interrupt controller, 8253 programmable interval timer, a UART at IO3F8, which is the standard address for a serial port. It has a PS2 keyboard controller, 8042. It has an RTC, a real-time clock with the CMOS. Everyone knows the CMOS, right? MC146818 is the chip number for that. An ISA bus. Even if you think you don't have an ISA bus, your computer has an ISA bus inside the Southbridge somewhere. And it has VGA. The PS4 doesn't have any of these things. So what do we do? Well, okay, let's look a little bit at how a PC works and how a PS4 works. This is a general, simple PC system. There's an APU or an Intel Core CPU with a Southbridge. Intel calls it PCH, AMD FCH. There's an interface that is basically PCIe, though Intel calls it DMI and AMD calls it UMI, whatever. DDR3 RAM and a bunch of peripherals and SATA, whatever. The PS4 kind of looks like that, right? So you'd think this can't be that. What's so hard about this? Because all the crap I mentioned earlier is in the Southbridge in a PC, right? So, the PS4 has a Southbridge, right? So the Southbridge, the AMD standard FCH implements Intel legacy from 1981. The Marvel Aeolia, Marvel is the maker of the PS4 Southbridge, implements Intel Legacy from 2002. What does that mean? That's no Southbridge. That's a Marvel Armada SoC. So it's not actually a Southbridge. It was never a Southbridge. It's an ARM system on a chip, CPU with everything. It's a descendant from Intel Strong ARM or X-Scale. It has a bunch of peripherals. And what they did is they stuck a PCI bridge on the side and said, hey, x86, you can now use all my ARM chip. So it exposes all of its ARM peripherals to the x86. They added some stuff they really needed for PCs, and it has its own RAM. Why do they do this? Well, it also runs FreeBSD on the ARM in standby mode. And that's how they do the whole download updates in the background, get content, update, whatever. All that crap is because they have a separate OS on a separate chip running in standby mode. Okay, that's great, but it's also batshit insane. Yeah. So, quick recap. This is what a PCI bus number looks like. It has, sorry, a device number. So it has a bus number, which is 8 bits, a device number, which is 5 bits, and a function number, which is 3 bits. So you'll probably see this in LSPCI if you ever done that. This is what a regular Southbridge looks like. So it has a USB controller, a PCI, ISA bridges, SATA, whatever, and it has a bunch of devices. So one Southbridge pretends to be multiple devices because you only have 3 bits for a function number. So you can only have up to 8 functions in one device. So the, Intel Southbridge just says, well, device 14, 16, 181. We have just a bunch of devices and you can talk to all of them. If you LSPCI on a roughly unpatched Linux kernel on the PS4, you get something like this. So the Aeolia, first of all, clones itself into every PCIe device because they were too lazy to do if device equals my number, then reply, otherwise don't reply. No, they just said, oh, just reply to every single PCIe device that might work. So Linux sees the Southbridge, like 31 different times, which is kind of annoying because it gets really confused when it sees 31 clones of the same Southbridge. And then it has 8 functions, ACPI, Ethernet, SATA, SDMC, PCI Express, okay. 8 functions, all 3 bits. Turns out 8 functions are not enough for everybody. Function number 4, PCI Express Glue, has a bridge config, MSI interrupt controller, ICC, we'll talk about that later, HPET timers, flash controller, RTC timers, 2 serial ports, I2C, all this smashed into one single PCI device. So Linux has a minimum system requirement to run on anything. You need a timer, you need interrupts, and you need some kind of console. The PS4 has no PIT and no PIC and no standard serial, so none of the standard PC stuff is going to work here. The board has test points for any 250 standard serial in a different place. So we want D-message over that. Okay, fine. Linux has earlycon, which we can point to a serial port and say, please send all your D-message here very early because I really want to see what's going on. Doesn't need IRQs. You set console equals UART 8250, you tell it the type, the address, the speed, and you'll see it says 3200 instead of 115 kilobaud. That's because their clock is different. So you set 3200, but it really means 115K. And that gets you D-message. That actually gets you, Linux booting, uncompassing, whatever. That's pretty good. Okay, we need a timer, because otherwise everything explodes. Linux supports the TSC, which is a built-in CPU timer, which is super nice and super fun. The PS4 has that. But Linux tries to calibrate it against the legacy timer, which on the PS4 doesn't exist, so that's fail. So again, the PS4 really is not a PC. So what we need to do here is define a new sub-architecture, because Linux supports this concept. It says, is this not a PC? This is a PS4. The bootloader tells Linux, hey, this is a PS4. And then Linux says, okay, I'm not going to do the old timestamp calibration. I'm going to do it for the PS4, which has a special code that we wrote that calibrates against the PS4 timer. And it disables the legacy crap. Okay, so now this is not a PC. This is officially not a PC anymore. Okay, now we can talk about ACPI. You might know ACPI for all its horribleness and all its evilness and all its Microsoftiness, but ACPI, most people associate with suspend and hibernate. It's not just power. It has other stuff too. So we need ACPI for PCI config, for the IOMMU, for the CPU frequency. The PS4, of course, has broken ACP tables because, of course, it would be. So we fixed them in PS4K exec. Okay, now interrupts. We have timers, we have serial, we fixed some stuff. The PS4 does message signaled interrupts, which is what I said, the non-legacy, the nice new thing where you just write a value, and what you do is you tell the device, when you want to interrupt, please write this value to this address. The device does that, and the CPU interrupt controller sees that, right, and says, oh, this is an interrupt, and then just fires off that interrupt into the CPU. That's great. It's super,
Yo, we're gonna get to the tech news right away, okay? But real quick, listen to this bass drop, okay? Oh, man! Oh, crazy, right? Okay.